You are listening to Veggie Doctor Radio, and this is episode number 227. Welcome to Veggie Doctor Radio. I am your host, Dr. Yami, board-certified pediatrician, certified lifestyle medicine physician, certified health and wellness coach, author, speaker, mother, wife, and human being. I passionately believe in the power of diet, habits, and mindset in sparking and sustaining well-being and joy in our lives. This podcast combines expert interviews and thoughtful monologues to explore plant-based nutrition, lifestyle medicine, parenting, mindset, and other exciting and fun topics. I hope that these episodes inspire you, uplift you, and equip you with the knowledge and tools to live your best life. Are you ready to get started? Let's do it. Well, hello, veggie lovers. Welcome back to Veggie Doctor Radio. I have quite an interesting episode for you today. It's a little different, actually a lot different from my typical episode. Today, I have interviewed Alex Ferri, who is the CEO and founder of Palmaïa, the House of AИA in Mexico, which is a vegan resort. So you're going to learn all about that and some other interesting things. But let me tell you more about Alex. So Alex Ferri is a passionate entrepreneur who has founded many projects, from Charlie's Vegan Tacos, a vegan taco franchise in Mexico and Miami, to a review app for guests to review hotels while they are staying at them, which he founded in 2013. Alex also owned and operated Sandoz Hotels and Resorts for many years. In contrast to Sandoz, Palmaïa is the first time Alex has been able to build exactly what he would want out of a resort, modeled after his own lifestyle. He is a vegan and fiercely passionate about sustainability and how our eating behaviors impact the environment. He created Palmaïa to be a gathering point to welcome like-minded individuals, create community, and help people discover the unknown through the sound and wellness programming. It sounds super fascinating. It sounds like an amazing place to visit. I would love to visit someday, so I'll keep you updated if I go. But in this episode, we talk about his journey into veganism, which is quite interesting. His entrepreneurial journey as well. How he got kicked out of school when he was 10 years old and what that prompted after that. And then we talk about his resort, Palmaïa, the House of AIA, why he created it, who it's created for, what his guests are typically like, why they're visiting the resort, what his favorite feature is of the resort, and what it was like opening a resort right before the global pandemic, because he opened it in January of 2020. And I thank you for being a loyal listener. And if you're first time on Veggie Doctor Radio, thank you so much. I hope that you will explore all the different episodes I have. And also feel free to check out some of the freebies I have at dryami.com/free, because we're creating playlists now, which are really helpful, especially if you're a parent and you would like to see all the episodes I've done that are pertaining to children and families. Then you can find that in that list of freebies. And we're going to be creating more and more playlists like that will help you navigate the podcast and all of the amazing resources that are on here. Again, thank you so much for being a listener on Veggie Doctor Radio. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And now let's welcome Alex Ferri. Hello, Alex Ferri, and welcome to Veggie Doctor Radio.
Dr. Yami, lovely to meet you.
Well, I'm so happy to have you here, and we're going to be talking about some interesting things, the resort that you've created. But before we get there, I want to hear about your vegan journey. I'm curious, when and why did you adopt veganism? And also, how do you define veganism for yourself?
Yeah, I guess everyone's got their own version of their journey and their story, right? Mine started probably around 15 years ago. So I just moved to Mexico, and we could probably talk about that later, because that's got a lot to do with how I created Palmaïa. But my journey started when I went to LA to see some friends of mine who were living in Silver Lake, obviously, vegan center now, but that was 15 years ago. And there were friends of mine who moved from Spain, and they were always into alternative medicine and interesting food, like stuff I didn't know about, because I used to eat normal. But when you define normal for me, I came from the Mediterranean, so my normal diet was always mostly fish, vegetables, and things like that. I was never really a large meat consumer anyway, probably just barbecues. And I never really ordered in a restaurant, but when I was at friends' houses, they do barbecues and things like that. But anyway, I got to his house in Silver Lake, and it was in the mountains there, and I walked into the kitchen, and the guy was had a tray of almonds in a thing, and he had this little thing, and he was blending stuff with a Vitamix, which I didn't even know what they were at the time. I go, what the hell are you doing? He goes, no, because I've soaked the almonds, and they're going to sprout, and they'll activate the enzymes, and they're going to dehydrate them. When I dehydrate them, I'm going to rehydrate them again, and I'm going to put them in this bag, and I'm going to make almond milk. And I'm like, what are you talking about, please? So anyway, we had this massive conversation about raw food, because he was a raw food at the time. And anyway, the conclusion is that they gave me the China study. Obviously, I think a lot of people, that book has been a breaker for many people, and for me it was too. So they gave me the China study. I came back to Mexico. I plowed through it. I've always been really interested in health anyway. And I read through it, and it was pretty clear that obviously meat as such wasn't good for you. No, I mean, the whole book is, I think you can all read the book, and I think most people have done. I think what's interesting also to point out is like the book is very black and white. So for example, it says meat in general is bad for you, but my only critique of it would be that, for example, it doesn't say what type of meat, no, because I think there's a big difference between mass-processed industrial meat put into these little packages that you cut as synthetic meat, as maybe pasture-grown meat in the mountains, or maybe the meat the Masai Mara hunt in Africa or whatever, no? So there wasn't that comparison, but the statistical differences were pretty significant. So anyway, I stopped eating meat, and I started on this journey, and after eating meat, I then gave up sugar, because I grew up, I'm half English, half Spanish. So I grew up in England. Well, I grew up in Spain, but I was expelled from school when I was 10. My mother sent me to boarding school for 10 years. So anyway, in boarding school in England, every time you eat, you have a dessert. And not that you go to a shop to buy anything, and there's sweets everywhere. So you pump up on sugar all the time. So I was pretty much addicted to sugar. So what I noticed when I stopped eating sugar as milk, as cheese, as anything, is that it took me about 6 months to lose that desire to eat. Like when I stopped eating meat as well, for 6 months I'd be in restaurants, and some friends would be eating maybe a filet mignon. I'd be looking at it going, maybe I should have a bite or whatever, And what I learned afterwards was that these addictions aren't, it's your brain that sends the signal, but it's really your microbiome that sends the signal to your brain. Because what happens is obviously the gut bacteria you have inside of you is composed of whatever you eat. So if I'm eating lots of meat, then the bacteria that was on the cow, that was in the land, that then goes into my stomach, is in my bacteria. Once that level of bacteria your body's used to starts to go down, it sends a signal to the brain to replenish it. So the replenishment of that bacteria is eat more meat. So it took me 6 months to stop eating sugar. And I used to carry around a bag of dates. So I'd be out at meetings, and I'd pull out a measurable date and start eating it, and that would calm the addiction down, let's call it, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, the last thing I stopped eating was Parmesan cheese. And that was the hardest one for me, because Parmesan, Mediterranean, Italian food. I used to love cooking, and Italian food was always a central part of my cooking. So Parmesan was probably the last one I gave up, and it took me a process at the time of a year to become fully plant-based. So, because at the time I was in Mexico, right, and there was no stuff you could buy. I mean, I had to relearn to cook. I didn't have any friends who were plant-based at the time here, so I had to relearn how to buy food, because I didn't know what, nutritional yeast, coconut aminos, chlorella, spirulina. I was like, that was like a new language for me, So you've got to relearn to buy, and you have to relearn to cook as well. So it took me a whole year to do the process by myself, which is what I recommend most people. I recommend most people when they are thinking about health. I recommend them to do it in baby steps, because although once you it depends also how you get the message. Like I got the message nutritionally first, then environmentally, and then ethically. I think a lot of people get the ethical hit first. They're like, oh, I can't, so they stop cold. Many people have done it in different ways, and I really respect people who can go one day to the other. I wasn't able to, but 15 years later, I think I've been pretty good. I mean, I have to admit, I do sometimes, for example, nobody's perfect. I do if I'm in the Mediterranean with my friends and we're on the beach and someone gets a local white fish and the salad and vegetables, I'll probably have a bit of white fish and salad and vegetables. If I'm in Italy, like once every 2 years with my friends and they're in Florence, whatever, they're having some wine and there's a piece of cheese, I might have one little piece of cheese just to remember what it used to be like or whatever. But I always feel like that my stomach gets destroyed the next day, so it's clearly not good for you. And and that's basically how I started.
And so how would you describe, like, how do you define veganism for yourself now? So you said that you started kind of at the nutrition, but you did eventually come full circle also to the ethical side of it.
Yeah, I think it does. I think there's three pillars. There's nutritional, ethical, and environmental. And I think for me, I very much, I have a bit of conflict with the word vegan, because I had a business before I had Palmaïa. I started a taco food truck in Tulum, and we were the first pretty business like 8 years ago to do vegan tacos, like with meat replicas, but it was all homemade. It wasn't packaged meat. You know? So what I learned with that was a lot of how the vegan community works. And what I learned was that the biggest enemy to the vegan movement are many of the vegans themselves. Because what happens is that people get on this righteous pedestal and we start to criticize others instead of be compassionate, understanding, and teach non-violence in a loving way, not in a violent way of criticizing and pointing the finger, which I think is what scares people away and creates this big division, which isn't good. We have to be very careful and very meticulous almost about how we talk about vegan or plant-based. And for me, vegan isn't just about food. I think it's become popular over the past, I think over the past 10 years, maybe it's become more related to food alone because of the social media and the food sharing photos and all this. So people say I'm vegan with the food, but that's not true. I think the word vegan is much more profound. I think the word vegan really is an act of non-violence of behalf. You know, it's an act of love. It's an act of saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to live a non-violent life. And I believe no one can be truly vegan because we all destroy in some way or another. Me, by building this hotel, I already destroyed something as well. So it's very hard it's almost impossible to be non-violent in a pure ethereal way. But what we can do is the best we can. No? Like you can try and buy a car with no leather seats if you can, if you're lucky, if they even have an option nowadays. You can try and buy clothes with no leather. You can try and buy, wood that's more sustainably farmed instead of destroying old growth tree forests. There are many things you can do, So I think for me, vegan is living a life of non-violence as much as we can within the matrix within which we live.
Yeah, I love that. I fully agree with that because I don't believe that anybody can be perfect at anything, but there's so much suffering and there's so much destruction in the world that everything that somebody can do to decrease some of that suffering and destruction is contributing to the benefit, right? So
exactly.
If we point fingers and say you're not perfect enough, for some people, like you're saying, it's going to drive them away because a lot of us are all or nothing. So you're either going to go all in and try to be perfect, or you're like, screw them, I'm not going to do any of this stuff at all.
And what's worried me is that like health became political, which is ridiculous because health existed way before politics. What I've noticed is that this division between you're not vegan enough or whatever is now being used and it's become political as well. Whereas, as I say, health should never be political. Health is your given birthright and you're a sovereign being and you have the choice of health, whatever your ideology is. It shouldn't be because you support one guy that it means that your health, you're put in a box of a certain health philosophy. That's completely wrong because everyone's on their own journey anyway, and it's almost impossible that we're all at the exact same journey.
Exactly. Well, and there's also healthism that exists, and it can be very strong in the plant-based vegan community as well. And so we have to be careful that we're not judging other people because of their health status, because no matter how great a diet you have or lifestyle you have, unfortunately, we're all still human living in the real world. And sometimes we get sick.
At their own level. Everyone is at their own level, and you have to respect that level. And as you said, if one person decides not to eat meat once a week, then that's a massive gain already. Mm-hmm. That's probably like a few less animals dead every year. So that's already a win if you ask me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm just like insanely curious about how you got expelled from school at 10. So tell me that story. How did that happen?
Okay, what I've realized over time and what I've realized I've realized more why now lately, because I've realized that I was sent to the English boarding school because my mother being English, my father's Spanish, but my mother's mind through her conditioning and all the culture of England, everything is English private education is the best in the world and blah, blah, blah. So I was sent to an English boarding school where I literally had the best education. But one of the best. But if you ask me, what I've realized is that the entire education system in which we live is one massive indoctrination system. And the way I think is I think even as a kid, it seems I was always the dumbest guy in school, the last in every report and everything. And what they do is, as a kid, as the system boxes you into that and believing that. So if you believe that, you will become that, right? So what happened was, I was just in Spain. The system was too rigid and matrixy, or whatever you want to call it. And I guess as a child, I wanted to do other things. I was a creative person. I remember I used to go into my parents' garage at home and start ripping things apart and inventing pieces and putting things together. So basically, I was just bored. So I just run away from school every day. So I ran away from school every day. In the end, the dean said to my mother, "Look, if you don't take him out tomorrow, we're expelling him." So she said, "Okay." So she took me out.
Wow, super fascinating. But you thrived at the boarding school?
I think I was aligned and disciplined, so I went into more academia. I started studying a bit more. I was always in the dumber class, let's say. I was never ahead of the curve, but I think I did it. It served its purpose, and it made me part of who I am today. It also gave me lots of trauma, which allowed me to recognize things and heal at the same time. Because our conditioning is that boarding school suffering is good for you. It's all character building. Go and play rugby in minus 15 degrees in shorts and get thrown in the snow and beat up. It's all good. It's character building. But what you don't realize is that at the time, who you are is getting traumatized by all that. So it also, everything happens for a reason, right? Everything's perfect.
Wow, that's fascinating. How many languages do you speak?
5.
So English, Spanish,
English, French, Italian, and a bit of Portuguese, I guess, and I can pretty much learn quickly. So
yeah, I love it. I love how everybody in Europe knows minimum 3 languages from the beginning. It's just amazing, because here in the U.S. it's English. That's all people know.
My father speaks 10 languages.
10.
He didn't go to school. He ran away from school when he was 13. He started his own business from nothing, and I always said to him as a kid, "Hey, Dad, how do you speak so many languages?" He goes, "My son, the best way to learn a language is in bed." So I guess he was pretty busy at the time.
Oh my gosh!
Yep.
Scandalous!
I know. I mean, he speaks Norwegian, Swedish, Danish, all these
interesting. Okay,
yeah.
So
it's another way, I guess, right?
So you haven't been quite as lucky as your father then, since you only know 5 languages.
Yeah, I need to get busier. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! All right,
I need to up the game.
So it sounds like you have a lot in common with your father, though, as far as entrepreneurship and just personality type and the way that you see the world.
Yeah,
so
we're each forged by each of our parents, right? Somehow. Yeah. And then we learn to decondition from what they've taught us, right?
So yeah, tell me about your entrepreneurship journey. So it sounds like you've owned a restaurant. I know you've done some other things too before you started your own resort.
Well, I studied at university in London and Paris, and then when I left the university, I was going to work for a consultancy firm in London, but then I was like, I've been away from home for 14 years because I really want to go back to my family. We're all in Spain. I was like, what do I do? Consulting firm or go and work in a family business? I was like, consulting firm, stuck in an office in London, they're called, go home. So I chose to go home in the end. I started working for my father, and he basically chucked me on the building site because we were building hotel resorts at the time because he has various businesses. That was one of them. So I spent 5 years in the building site, building hotels and things. And then I didn't want to be in the business anymore. I did some sales as well for the corporate structure and things like that. And I left the business and I started my own furniture company in 2004. And what I do is I spent 3 months a year in Asia, going to manufacturers, designing furniture and decoration things, importing them to Europe and wholesaling them around Europe and things. And that went bankrupt in 2006-07 because of the housing crisis. If people aren't buying furniture, then obviously they're not buying homes, they're not buying furniture, right? So I closed that down, and I didn't really know what to do. And also my parents had separated. There was also drama in the family a few years ago. And at the time, when they separated, my father kept his side of the business, and my mother was assigned the hospitality side. So someone needed to take over the hospitality side. I'd already been to Mexico many times before. The majority of the business was here. So I decided to move to Mexico in December 2007. I came on vacation with about 20 friends. We enjoyed Christmas and New Year together. They all left, and I stayed. And the business at the time was Sandos Hotels, which is where they're large all-inclusive resorts, 1,000 rooms, fun activities and all these sorts of things, non-stop. And I started running those, and obviously my philosophy in life was different to my father's. My father's just survival, business, money, and mine was different. Mine was more I cared more with the environment, the social aspect, and basically I think just chasing profit is a very myopic view of business. You should chase many things at once that can bring many good to everyone else. No, so my idea was to convert the business as much as I could into something that created good. And the relevant story for that really is that we have one resort called Sandos Caracol, which is a beautiful like nature, mangroves. And I decided in 2010 to name it an eco resort, right? I was going to turn it into an eco resort. And everyone's like, no, you're crazy, you can't do that. How can you make a massive 1,000 room inclusive resort eco? It's impossible. Eco is only little boutique chic places in little mountains or whatever. I'm like, no. Eco, we all must care about the environment because we are an extension of the world with a consciousness. We are part of nature. We are an extension of nature. Everything in us is just an extension of nature. We should all care for nature. It shouldn't just be for the wealthy or for whoever, or, it needs to be everyone. So I done this project. What we did is we decided to create a concept where it's called the All Nature Experience, and it involved 58 different activities that you do every day involved in nature, like mine survival, jogging in the jungle, macro photography. There were lots of different activities people could do within the hotel. We cleared all the rivers up and did all these beautiful routes everywhere. And in the evening, we created shows that were based on Mexican culture and the Mayans and things, and they all integrated, and they invited people next day to explore nature. And it was really beautiful. And what happened was that we were doing this for like 8 years, and we were actually the first resort in the world to eliminate plastic water bottles in 2011, I think. Imagine, when no one was even thinking of that. And anyway, this is about 2007. We've been doing this for 7 years. We've been pushing this, and I had my team. I've got my creative director who's incredible. He's been with me for 15 years as well. And I've got this little team of guys who execute everything around me. I have the vision, and these guys, without them, I wouldn't be able to do it. And we were sitting together, we were looking at everything, and we were like, this is crazy. Look, Instagram, we put a photo of this monkey we rescued. We had him for 3 months. We put him back in the jungle. We posted a video on Instagram, and we got like 26 likes. What's wrong with people? Don't people care? And then the next photo would be a guest with a glass of beer with the hotel name on the beach. They take a photo of it, and they get 8,000 likes. And we'd be like, this isn't working. This isn't working. We can't spoon feed people ecology. People don't care. So that day we decided to have a meeting the next day where we were going to change it all. Okay, let's just see what we're going to do. We're not going to push eco anymore. We'll do something else. Because this is too much effort. We were doing so much work. It was really, we were pretty drained after 7 years of trying to like push environmental factors, and you get people to wake up a bit, Anyway, so I went to sleep. Woke up in the morning, and an email came in my inbox, like bing. I was like, huh? Expedia Environmental Awards. And it was Earth Day. And what Expedia had done is they'd analyzed more than 8 million reviews from hotels around the world. So 80 million. It was a crazy, huge amount. And they, through AI, they took all the comments of like saying this is the most sustainable, eco, referring to nature. So basically, our hotel was number 1 in the world. We've been chosen as number 1 in the world of all the hotels. We were the only hotel in all of the Americas, and all the other eco hotels were little tiny boutique ones in the Philippines and these places like that. So I printed the email, took it into the office. I was like, guys, we've got to keep going. Let's keep going. So
everybody, it reminds me of that feeling that you get where you want to give up right before something big happens, It's just feels so grueling.
Well,
but
the same thing happened with
the
same thing happened with the taco food truck. Because the food truck I opened a few years before with Charlie, who I met in one of my hotels. He'd been head of chef for lots of steak houses in Mexico City. He didn't want to work. He changed and he went to work in Cabo. I met him there. And we spoke about the idea of, he never knew what plant-based was, so I spoke about it. He started trying plant-based himself. And then we spoke about the idea of like, what's the best way to get people to eat less meat? Okay, not eliminate meat, get people to eat less meat. So the idea was to create food that was so tasty that people would eat it and not care that they're not eating the meat. So we created what was called Charlie's Vegan Tacos. And what happened was that we opened it in Tulum the first year, and for 1 whole year, we were selling maximum $200 a day.
Wow.
It was a disaster. It was like vegan tacos. Everyone thought, what's that? Lettuce and kale. So anyway, that happened. And then what happened was, after a year, November came, which was the high season. And obviously the few people who had gone had been sharing it and telling everyone about it. And November came and suddenly, boom, everyone arrived when it became high season. And it started working. And we expanded it. We opened one in Miami, and then we ended up closing it down because during COVID, we couldn't find any workforce for it. So we just closed it down in the end. And Charlie was joining me anyway in Palmaïa. So this is a far larger project where you can do much more impact anyway.
Wow. Well, you've definitely had a lot of experience in the entrepreneurship. So tell me about the House of AIA then. So it's Palmaïa, the House of AIA. How did that come about? Yeah.
So that came about because I was already, by 2018, when all this change happened in the other resort, I was already building this resort, but it was going to be an extension of the Sandos I had. Like, it was going to be an extension of the all-inclusive I had. What I did is I'd taken, we'd have this is the first piece of land my father bought 25 years ago in Mexico. But I'd been so busy refurbishing all the others and doing so many things, I never got time to deal with it. And also I kind of like almost wanted to leave it virgin by itself, but in the end I had too much pressure from all the share everyone, I had to do something. So we were going to do it. So the best thing I could do at the time was I changed the environmental permit, because the original permit was 14 buildings and it involved destroying the entire piece of land and just doing cement, and it was going to be like your typical resort, no? So I spent 5 years changing the environmental permit. I eventually changed it, and I made 7 buildings, which meant that we only occupied 30% of the space, which for me was a massive win at the time. So I started building it, and I've been working with a guy called Carlos, who was my architect, for 5 years. He became a complete friend to me. He was almost a spiritual guide as well. He'd done these incredible spiritual journeys. I mean, he'd done these crazy peyote journeys in the Mexican desert where he spent days there. And he was a very spiritual guy. He was amazing. And we started building this, and it was in like a cement structure. And in 2018, early 2018, late 2017, he had an accident and he went into a coma, right? So I was like, no, okay, stop, guys. We're not going to do this without him. So we said, well, I'll wait for him till he recovers. So anyway, 9 months passed, and he eventually passed away. So I was like, shit, what do I do now? So anyway, what happened, basically, all I can say is that what happened from that moment for 1.5 years till opening was literally divine intervention. Because basically everything just kind of downloaded through me, the name, what to do. And then I realized I wanted to do something that reflected my lifestyle and not the family business. I wanted to do something that changed the world. I wanted to do something that reflected everything I believed in. And every single, and also I built it with no architect, so I just started doing it myself. And imagine the destiny that I'd already been 5 years building hotels 20 years ago. So I literally built hotels without plans. So I basically got a bunch of architects with me. I started drawing everything out on paper. They were putting it in plans. And we just did it as we went along. And everything just happened exactly when it had to happen for it to open. It was unbelievable. Every person. I remember one day where I was with my creative director, Javi, and we were like, damn, we need an artist to paint that wall. What are we going to do? We got an email, and suddenly this Slavic girl is lost in Mexico. She's lost her permit, and she's an artist, and she needs a way out. And we're like, okay, call her. So we interviewed her, and she's still the girl here giving art lessons. I mean, literally everything happened when it had to happen. And also, there's no coincidence that... I called it the House of AIA, AIA being a short term for ayahuasca, as I later discovered, because one of my daughters is also called Alaya, and my life seems to be full of ayas everywhere. And basically this became the House of AIA through, as I said, divine intervention, I think, literally. Anyway, and then this leads on to one of your other questions you'll probably have, which is how did I deal 2 months probably opening before COVID hit, right?
That was my next question, because you opened like in January of 2020, right?
So honestly, again, it was divine intervention. It was a godsend for me. Why? Because I was so busy improvising and doing everything that once I opened this, I was so drained and destroyed. The last 3 months almost killed me, I think. And anyway, I opened it, but normally when you open these resorts, you launch it 2 years before because you have all the marketing material, you have all the photos, so I hadn't had time to do any of that. So we literally opened with no menus. So basically we opened and the chefs were just doing whatever people wanted. What do you want to eat? Okay, we'll start doing that. So basically this cool down period of COVID, like gave me time to solidify the product. And I think we ended up, for the past 6 months, it's been as it has to be now. And I've been dedicating myself to like getting out to the world, sales pitches, talking, going to events and everywhere, and basically selling it now, because for 2 years I couldn't sell it because no one was traveling or willing to travel.
Yeah. Do you feel like have you seen in Mexico a rebound of travel? We just recently went to the UK and I feel like it was just packed, just like people everywhere. Are you seeing the same thing in Mexico?
Mexico's been busy since the month after lockdown, basically. Here there was no COVID, basically. Everyone just filled it up, and it was just everyone was here. It was unbelievable.
That was the refuge, Mexico.
Yeah, seriously, everyone is escaping to here, and everyone was here. Yeah. And everyone was here, and it was fine. It was amazing.
So the resort is in Tulum?
No, the resort is south of Playa del Carmen. So Playa del Carmen is have you been here before?
I've been to Playa del Carmen. It's been
so Playa del Carmen is basically
years.
an urban little city, but basically it kind of like has a very defined end and beginning. Mm-hmm. And at the end, because it becomes virgin jungle, so we're like at the end, like surrounded by 400 acres of jungle. So the most amazing thing is that for me is that you're walking along and you've got these beautiful jungles, and then you walk a bit and you go into these dunes and you go into the ocean. So all these ecosystems kind of feel like they're hugging you as you're here, which is really nice.
That's cool. So how has the resort been doing, and what are you proudest of after building this resort? What part of it do you like the most?
I think I like the most the fact that we are changing people's lives. I mean, the ultimate purpose for me is to help people to heal in whatever way I can. I mean, healing can come in many forms, as I say to people. Healing could be just maybe being a week with no cell phone, that could be healing for someone. So healing comes on many levels. I think here we're doing some really profound healing, and the people that embrace the product and I just want people to come here who are curious about health, curious about what's next, And I think we've created this amazing structure where people can let go of their barriers and just explore and discover new ways of living, which is really nice. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the reviews, it's really beautiful for me to see people like leaving here changed, which is amazing.
So what's the typical guest? Who is this resort for?
I think when I built it, I was building it for the people who had chased the American dream, but then realized that doesn't bring happiness. I'd met so many people in America who had made so much money and they were just all miserable, and so many people who are stuck in this rat race and they were trying to buy the latest car, the latest watch, the latest this, and they've all reached this point where they realize that this doesn't bring happiness. It's just a dopamine shot, I need to activate the serotonin somehow, right? They're at this point where they don't know what to do. They're changing. I think this was built for people like that. So I think it's an amazing people who are looking for the next step in their personal growth. But mainly it's built for, I think there's nowhere in the world really where you can go and enjoy a proper, like a typical vacation where you're on the beach, you've got the pool, you've got fun activities, but it's put into a health structure, right? I call it progressive wellness here. So basically what you do is it's not the right word to use, but it's like a retreat on steroids really, right? So basically here we have everything you can imagine from any retreat in one place. And what it is, it's a health system centered around healthy food with a support structure around it, which just happens to be the resort. And the resort's comprised of many different experiences, which are included in the price you pay. So you've got all these, what we call the architects of life, which is the holistic program, which starts in the morning and fades out in the mid-afternoon, which are like 29 different activities every week you can do. You've got yoga, you've got sound healing, you've got gravity control, there's lots of, you can see them all on the internet anyway. And then in the afternoon, we start with music, like in the afternoon, because I think music's very healing. I mean, what's better than dancing on the beach with your friends and laughing, right? So music, we have music programs, electronic music with deep fusion, with acoustic overlays and things happening in the evenings. And then we're going when it gets busy, we'll start doing special events as well. And hopefully festivals and summits and things like that.
That sounds so fun. It sounds really great. What % of your guests would identify as vegan? Do you feel like it attracts a high amount of vegans, or just people that are kind of curious about it?
I think curious about it, which is the best thing because they're the people we can have the most impact on. I thought this would be vegan heaven when I built it, but obviously not. Because my biggest problem in life was traveling vegan, right? I was like, where do I go? Where can I eat? I want to go somewhere where I can eat vegan and not be the afterthought, right? Because everywhere you go, you've got the menu, and you always have to choose the option. The option is usually just some grilled vegetables inside a taco or some grilled vegetables mixed with some pasta, and it's so boring, no? So here we do it the other way around. Here, all our menus are plant-based with some non-vegan options. So, and the reason we offer non-vegan options is because I said because of compassion. Because everyone's at a different level of their health journey, right? Not everyone's fully vegan yet. So I need people to be able to come here to explore other things, like not just health, but their consciousness and their body, the energetic healing things. All these things need to be explored, but you might not be there on your health journey yet, and it might not necessarily be the diet they have. So I think that's important. Also, I think it's important to respect the mainstream science. As you know, mainstream science, there aren't many long-term food studies because they take like 25 to 35 years to do. They cost hundreds of millions. So there's only about 4 or 5 interesting ones, I think. And they all say pretty much the same thing, that like plant-based, vegetarian, and Mediterranean are the healthiest diets in that order. But what most of them seem to have in common is that you can eat up to 85% plant-based and have 100% of the benefits. And I think the reason being is because they haven't done a study that's long enough yet that shows the statistical difference in that. So I think it's important for us to respect the mainstream science, to respect people's journey they're on, and also to be compassionate as to, maybe a girl's coming who's yoga and vegan, but the guy wants to eat steak. I want her to enjoy the experience as well. And who knows, he might even start to discover his journey here as well. So I think living in this gray area is important because it can attract more people in to do more good.
Well, it looks like the food is amazing. Do you find that people are surprised by how good the plant-based food is?
Yeah. Everyone's. Also, I'm super obsessed with food. I love cooking. If you look over here, I've got my fermenting jars right behind me, fermenting food. So there's always I love cooking. I'm completely obsessed by food perfection. So I'm always on top of them all. I'm in the kitchen. I'm with the guys, and I'm very meticulous. It took me like 2 months just to get them to do sushi rice correctly, for example. So I think, the food is really good, and I travel around the world, and I can probably say easily that we have some of the best plant-based food in the world.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Easily.
All right. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit and ask you,
Sure.
What do you wish more people knew?
I wish more people knew that health is easy. It's not as complicated as people make it. Health. What I try and teach people at Palmaïa with the experience is that you can enjoy life and be healthy at the same time. Most people think being healthy is a sacrifice, right? And also the marketing, like all this bombardment of buy this machine, buy that supplement. It's like supplements everywhere, vitamins everywhere. It just confuses you in the end. It's not that complicated, you know. One thing that's interesting for me is that I think this is an analogy I use a lot, which is most people, when they think they're going to go on vacation, just the default vacation, you immediately think, I'm going to eat as much as I want because I'm going to be on vacation, right? And then you know by that, I'm going to eat, so I'm going to put on weight. And then you say to yourself in your head, okay, but it's okay because I'll do a diet when I get home. But my question is, how many people really do a diet? Probably 10% maybe, right? Because once you get home, you've got the kids, you've got to work, everything. But as we know also, diets don't work because 85% of people who do a diet weigh more than they did before the diet, after the diet, because it's restrictive. So they start eating again afterwards, they put on more weight, and then in this endless loop, right? So what we do here is that, imagine you can be on vacation, you can enjoy life, you can enjoy music, you can do adventures outside of the hotel, you can be on the beach, you can eat incredible, and you can be healthy and probably lose weight. I think most people who come here who eat as much as they want probably lose weight unless they're not already slim themselves.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, reduce calorie density. But at the same time, you can eat ad libitum, eat as much as you want, feel satisfied, be able to tune into your body. And so it's a win-win situation for most people. Yeah. But I think what you're getting at also is the fact that we kind of live life unsustainably. And why not just choose habits that you can sustain all the time, whether you're at home or whether you're traveling, instead of always feeling like you have to do this like binge restrict, you know, like I'm just going to restrict myself. And then if I'm on vacation, I'm going to eat whatever, overindulge, probably not feel great while you're vacationing because you're overstuffed and not feeling good. And then, you know, that cycle over and over and over again.
I think that accompanies really the way we're living, because what happens is, we're living the story of disconnect with nature. So as we disconnect from nature, we're also disconnected with food, we're disconnecting with real music, we're disconnecting with so many things. It's the story of disconnection, but we need to, it's a story, it's separation from our essence, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the more we connect with nature, the more you start eating healthy anyway, because the more you learn about nature, you learn about soil, the bacteria and the fungi, and the importance of that in creating the amino acids in the plants, and health, and soil health, and atmospheric health, and it all kind of accompanies each other. So once you start that journey to caring about the world, you start caring about yourself as well. But really, to care about the world, you need to care about yourself. So it's kind of a loop somehow we need to close, right? But I think there are many exits onto that loop that you can then start.
Yeah, it's positive feedback cycle for sure.
Yeah, there's many ways of getting there, I think.
All right, do you have a morning routine?
I don't have all these crazy routines like a lot of people. What I do is I do some dry brushing. I do, when I wash my teeth, I do tongue scraping. I do exercise maybe 3-4 times a week. I do varied exercise, so I'll do tennis, yoga, primal move, running. I vary exercises, maybe swimming as well. But mainly I fast as well. So normally I try and do every week, Monday and Tuesday, no eating. So I do 2 days of no eating every week if I can. If I'm traveling, obviously I can't do it. And then every 6 months, I do about 2 or 3 weeks of no eating as well.
Wow. Do you do that by yourself unsupervised?
Yep.
Wow. Incredible.
Yep. All good.
You're still alive, so I guess it's working.
Yeah, okay, I got my own method.
Right. I haven't ever done this on my podcast before because I'm trying really hard to avoid all the isms.
Yes.
But what is your age?
46.
Wow. Okay, I'm not trying to be judgmental about age, but for those that are listening, Alex looks like he's in his 20s. And so whenever you started talking about working when you're already, so early, I was like, wait, this math is not adding up, already being vegan for 15 years. That's amazing. You're older than me. You look like 20 years younger than me. So that's incredible. I think
it's, as I said, I don't know if it is what it is, but it's just, as I said, it's simple in the end. And basically my philosophy has always been my body's my temple, but mainly avoid every single toxin you can.
All right. Anything else that circling back to your resort, what else would you like to have my listeners know about the resort? How can we connect with you? How can they find it, book their next stay?
Yeah, well, you can find us on Instagram, obviously, under the House of AIA, and also the webpage, thehouseofaia.com. And I'd say that anyone who's curious about health and wants to learn more, or wants to just live a unique experience, or just wants to carry on their health journey, I think we're the perfect place, really. And there's nowhere, I really believe at the moment, there's nowhere else in the world. And I've really traveled a lot, been to a lot of places. And the idea with this place was for it to be unique. And currently, I think it's unique in the world.
I love it. Well, I hope I get to visit someday. I think that would be
Please
great.
do.
Okay, last question. Leave my listeners with your best tip for traveling as a vegan.
As in the journey itself, or when you get there?
Traveling the world, yeah. Like what would be like your best tip, since you've definitely been all over the place? What do you think is a good thing to know?
I think the good thing to know is that obviously steer away from airplane and airport food. Always take your own. Always, especially for kids, always pack your own food. And a good tip for kids is, as you can't take liquids and things, you can do like a oatmeal and add lots of different things in it, and then you just add some water on the plane, and that's a nice little like porridge oatmeal for the kids if you have kids. And it's also light if you don't put the water and liquids in. And I think traveling the world, what I've discovered is that the best plant-based food is at normal restaurants, and you have to be able to go in there and veganize them.
Yes.
You know, so you have to like ask questions, ask what they have in them. And if you can veganize a few things, it's I think you can find pretty amazing things around the world, especially in Asia.
Yeah,
Asia's got some amazing things you can have like that.
Yeah, and I think the longer you're vegan and the more experience you have, the better you are at doing that at restaurants. You become like a menu ninja. You're like, I want you to put together this and this and this and this and make my plate that way.
Yeah. I also say that local knowledge is essential. So the most amazing thing is if you can find a friend who has a friend who lives in one of the cities you're going, and local knowledge is invaluable because instead of trying lots of different places and wasting time, they can direct you. So always try and find someone who lives somewhere first, get the connection and get some recommendations, because then you waste less time. Otherwise it's always disappointing to go and have a meal and not enjoy it, and you're wasting valuable time and you haven't got that much time on holiday normally.
Yeah. Awesome. Alex, it's been really great getting to know you. So thank you so much for sharing your journey and telling us about your resort. And I hope that my listeners that are curious about it will look it up and book their next day. And hopefully I will in the future as well.
Please do.
Thank you so
Look
much.
forward to seeing
and I
you
hope that you have a very plantastic day.
You too. Thank you very much.
Hey, veggie lover. I hope that you loved today's episode. Will you take a second and do me a huge favor? Please subscribe to my podcast so that you never miss an episode. You're the reason I'm here, and I want to share it all with